The Brain, an educational video by Aminah and Imrah. We'll start with basic parts of the brain, which is the brainstem, the cerebrum, the limbic system, and the cerebellum. The function of the brainstem is to control your heartbeat and your breathing. The function of the cerebrum is your speech, your thought, your movement, and your sensory impulses. The function of the limbic system is to regulate your emotions, your memories, and your hormones. And the function of the cerebellum is to maintain balance and to process smaller, more detailed movements. Now, a phrase to remember the four basic parts of the brain is cowardly cats like bones. Cowardly standing for a cerebellum and cats for cerebrum. This might be confusing, but remember that cowardly has an L and cerebellum has an L, while cats does not. Now, like stands for limbic system, L and bones stands for brainstem. So remember, cowardly cats like bones, cerebellum, cerebrum, limbic system, and brainstem. Parts of the cerebral cortex, or as I've called it before, the cerebrum. Okay, so this consists of four lobes, which is the frontal lobe, the parietal lobe, the occipital lobe, and the temporal lobe. The frontal lobe controls your speech and movement coordination. The parietal lobe is in charge of processing what you touch. The occipital lobe is in charge of processing what you see, such as shapes and colors. And the temporal lobe is in charge of processing what you hear. We move on to the limbic system. The limbic system is a smaller part of the brain situated near the temporal lobe. It consists of the hypothalamus, the hippocampus, the amygdala, and the pituitary gland. The hypothalamus regulates hunger, thirst, and body temperature. The hippocampus is in charge of your long-term memory, so while you are studying for an exam, the hippocampus is the part of the brain which is working hard. The amygdala is in charge of emotions, specifically fear and anger, and the pituitary gland is in charge of regulating your hormones. So while you are moody, it's actually your pituitary gland which is in charge of that feeling. Phrase to remember the four parts of the limbic system is hungry hippos ate Peter. Hungry for hypothalamus, because the hypothalamus is in charge of regulating hunger. Hippos for hippocampus, which is quite obvious, hippo and hippo. The A in at for amygdala, and the P in Peter for pituitary. So remember, hungry hippos ate Peter. Hypothalamus, hippocampus, amygdala, and pituitary. So now we move on to the brainstem. The brainstem consists of three main parts: the midbrain, the pons, and the medulla. The function of the midbrain is to control all messages going to the brain from the spinal cord or coming from the brain to the spinal cord. The function of the pons is to transport sensory information between the cerebellum and the cerebrum. The function of the medulla is to control all movement processes. A method for remembering the parts of the brainstem is the phrase Peter the mighty mover. Peter stands for pons, mighty for midbrain, and mover for medulla. Because there are two M's, it might seem confusing, but remember that mighty has an I just as midbrain has an eye and the function of the medulla is to move. So, remember, Peter the mighty mover, pons, midbrain, and medulla. So we hope you learned something, and hopefully with the help of our memory aids you'll remember all the basic parts of the brain. Till next time, bye.